You're listening to another episode of the Just Go Bike podcast. That's AKA Murph.
And that's AP. And this is the podcast where we talk about cycling just for the fun of it. With tales from all over the nation, come for the bikes, stay for the fun, and leave with a smile.
Well, hello, Murph.
Do I sound different?
You sound fancy.
I know. This is going to be so awesome. And I know people can't see us, so we have to explain to the listeners where we are, what we're doing. Obviously, everyone knows what we're doing. We're podcasting. But we're in a special place.
I know, it kind of looks like, in a good way, my mom's basement.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we are in a professional podcast studio.
Yeah. And yeah, so not only are we together face to face, but we're in a professional studio today.
Yeah. And this is a very special episode because we do have a guest with us. Actually, we were invited by this guest. And our guest is somebody that the listeners are going to know.
That's right.
Should we introduce him?
I think we should.
We'd like to welcome to the podcast Mike Schulte from the Pork Tees.
Hi, guys. I love when people are like, we've got a guest. And it's like everyone knows that you have a guest because it says my name on the podcast episode. You're like,
you're right.
Super special. We got to introduce
They've
them.
already looked at your
know.
picture. They
already know.
Yeah. Well, we are so excited to have you here. Or no, let me rephrase that. We are so excited you invited us here. And we are in like I said, a professional studio. It definitely, I kind of get a Wayne's World vibe in this room.
That's what we were going for.
Yeah, it's like the wood paneling walls and all the
VHS
tapes and poster, the Goonies poster I'm looking at.
There's literally a guitar right behind you. So whale.
I know. So we have different setup, really fancy equipment. So we do need to give a shout out to whose space this is.
Yeah.
So we are at Upload Media Group, and I'm going to let Logan tell us about Upload Media Group.
Oh, hey.
Hey.
Thanks for coming and visiting us.
Yeah,
Hi,
awesome.
Logan. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, Upload Media Group used to be known as LAS Media Group. We rebranded because we were doing so many awesome things. We needed a new brand to hold it all in.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're here in the Czech Village in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We have a space here in the COSEC building, and we're trying to connect communities through content. So podcasts, web series, live streams, all of those things. The goal is to make those accessible to people in the community, to businesses and organizations, and help elevate the whole community through content.
And the important question is, are you available for hire?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have original shows that we produce here.
Okay.
But we also, anybody in the community can come and rent our space, rent our studios. We actually have a monthly membership that we just released. Ooh. It's a flat fee once a month, and you get studio time, you get discounts on additional add-on services. So hopefully it makes it all really accessible.
What's your website?
You can go to uploadmediagroup.com, or if you can't remember all that, it's just uploadcr.com.
Yay.
I love it.
Yeah, thanks for letting us be here. And then one of the most important podcasts that are recorded in this space is The Confused Breakfast.
The Confused Breakfast.
What the heck is that?
I think we talked about it the last time I was on your show, maybe like 2 years ago. I think I was just starting it.
Yeah.
And it's evolved. Things have gotten weird. The podcast was started. It was kind of a COVID project for me. Being a creative person, all the shows went away in 2020, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't have that outlet of just doing things. And I had other podcasts. We still do a Pork Tornadoes podcast. It's just not updated that often. I did an Iowa music scene podcast. I've kind of quit doing that. I wanted an idea of a broader content thing, right? Where anyone that listens to this generally has a RAGBRAI affiliation or likes biking.
Yep.
Yeah.
I wanted something that like everyone in the world could relate to, and just kind of crossed my fingers that it would go big. And so we started the Confused Breakfast in late 2020, and it was all about classic movies, rewatching, revisiting movies from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, the ones that you thought you loved. Like, oh, I love that movie. I just haven't seen it in 20 years. I'm sure it's still good. You go back and you watch it and you go,
like,
wow. And we try to take off the rose-colored glasses and try to watch it as if it were our first time. And sometimes vice versa. Sometimes we hated movies as in our childhood, and then we went back and watched it and said, oh, wow. I can't believe I discounted that movie when I was 7 years old. I think The Princess Bride got our lowest nostalgic rating because it's like, ooh, that's a girl's movie. That's dumb. But then rewatching that movie, that is a classic.
Did you cry?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, did you hear this? So we dive deep, and we pick a movie every episode. We dive super deep on it. We review it. So the thing I learned most about Princess Bride was that Inigo Montoya, I'm prepared to die. Mm-hmm. Prepared to die. Do you know that his father, who's the actor that played Inigo Montoya? Regardless, I don't have my notes in front of me. His father had just passed away from cancer.
Viggo Mortensen.
No, it's not Viggo Mortensen.
God damn.
It was good. It's very good though.
Sorry, Mom.
Oh, wait, yeah. His father had just passed away.
It's Mandy Patinkin.
Mandy Patinkin. Thank you.
Yeah.
The other guy.
His father had just passed away from cancer, and he viewed that character that he was fighting as the cancer that killed his father. That was his acting method there. And so you see him in that movie like he is caught up in emotion, and that is how he was so good at portraying that role. And that's the kind of stuff that we talk about that you didn't know as a kid. And then you come to learn these things about movies, and it's been a wild ride. We were the #1 movie film review podcast in the entire United States a couple months ago.
That is awesome.
We had famous comedian Bert Kreischer was just on our show. We did Caddyshack and just had a blast with that episode. So it's been a while. I thought I would have stopped by now because now music's back, but now I'm like, I can't stop now.
You can't stop now.
We gotta go.
Yeah.
Well, and two of your very, very most popular guests are on right now.
Yeah. Can you believe it?
The Just Go Bike connects with the Confused
This
Breakfast.
is gonna be awesome.
I think this is my first crossover, so I'm pumped.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to, kind of bring the listeners in onto why we are podcasting together. But I don't think there's probably very many people out there that don't know what the Pork Tornadoes are. But give us the cheat sheet on it.
The world's worst named band. That is our tagline. Unfortunately, we started 15 years ago, and we never thought that we would be where we are now. So it's like, who cares what your band name is? But you can't change it once you get to a certain point. And it's a blessing and a curse because it is a terrible name, and it does not describe what we do very well at all. But it's one of the most memorable names. Like the minute you hear that name, you're like, oh, I know. I've heard of that.
Oh, yeah. Unforgettable. Yeah.
And we got so lucky one year. This was 2014. RAGBRAI came through Hiawatha. Mm-hmm. And the local committee asked us, had heard of us, said, we want you to play. And we played after Dennis DeYoung. Dennis DeYoung was the headliner, but we played after. So Dennis DeYoung opened up for us,
Oh, well, yeah.
And it was just like this. None of us had ridden RAGBRAI. Dumb RAGBRAI, whatever. You don't know anything about it until you experience it. And then being there that night, watching all these people come into town, enjoy themselves, be super polite and happy, and then leave and move on was like one of the coolest experiences ever for me because it just changed my outlook on the thing. And then, of course, all we wanted to do was play RAGBRAI.
Right, yeah.
People always ask, what's your favorite show of the year? It's always RAGBRAI.
Yeah.
It's because everyone is in such a great mood. Everyone's like carefree, having the time of their lives, talking to everybody, exerting energy, partying, enjoying themselves. And it is truly one of the best shows of the year. So we've played... Since Hiawatha, we've headlined 5 RAGBRAI overnight stays, 2 route announcement parties. We did the drive-in theater or the drive-in one in 2020.
In Waterworks.
That was our first show in like 5 months at that point, and it was so weird, and everything was weird. But it felt awesome, and it felt weird.
It was super cool. So
and so I we're sitting here just crossing our fingers that we can be a part of 2023, and you never know. I mean, who knows? We feel like. If I have to plead my case to the people out there, we feel like we'd be a great band.
Yeah.
For RAGBRAI.
Are you kidding me? RAGBRAI 50. Yeah. It should
RAGBRAI
be.
50.
It should be.
And we've had a lot of people reach out to me if you were at the route announcement party. I like to say stupid things in the microphone that are clearly a joke, but I like to play it off like it's not. And there's always a few people that start to think that, oh, he was serious. So we've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, we heard you were playing every night of RAGBRAI.
Oh.
Because I said that in the microphone. I said, hey, good news. We just found out that we're playing every night of RAGBRAI. And there was the 4 people that were like, what? That's so cool.
Wow.
Everyone else goes, that's a funny joke. So
Wow.
Oh my God.
we'll
that's
see, right?
amazing.
We'll see. Maybe some announcements will come out at some point.
And I think when you were on the podcast with me, we briefly touched on you are a pretty intense cyclist.
Well,
And by intense, I mean you rode one day of RAGBRAI, right?
I did.
And it kind of was a bet.
It was a bet. So I had never ridden like a road bike before. But then being a part of this RAGBRAI thing for so many years, I go, I kind of want to do it.
Right.
So I think we were in
it was
Sigourney.
Centerville?
We were in Sigourney the year before,
okay.
and I said, I'm going to ride a day next year. And then we put a bet out there. We said, okay, if this post gets 5,000 likes, Mike's going to ride a day of RAGBRAI. Boom, 5,000 likes. I mean, it was.
You're like, just kidding. I meant.
Yeah.
Actually, 10K.
I bought a road bike. I rode like 400 miles leading up to RAGBRAI, which turned out to not be enough to anybody, for me at least.
It's like, that's pretty good.
That's way more miles than I trained for the pre-ride.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, you're a pro bike rider.
Well,
I'm a
I
guy
don't know.
that hasn't ridden a bike since 8th grade at that point, and it was a BMX.
all right.
And of course, I played the night before. Didn't get to bed till 3 a.m. Your adrenaline's rolling. Didn't get on the road till 10:30 a.m.
Oh my
11
gosh.
a.m.
Yeah.
Shout out to Team Death Race for saying, "Come with us. It's going to be awesome." And then I was like, "Oh, you guys are on a whole different level than I am." And my mom rode with me, and I finished it, and it was so awesome. And then the next summer, I made it a goal to ride 1,000 miles in the summer. I did it. That was 2020. That was the COVID year. Then I had a baby, and I haven't been on my bike. I haven't been on my bike since.
Well, wait till she grows up old enough to have a little tricycle.
That's
Then
gonna be
maybe
so
you'll
great.
start biking.
I mean, that still averages out to what, like 300 miles per year for the last 3
yeah,
years,
there
if
you
you do
go.
it that way.
Which, if you would have told me that 5 years ago, I'd be like 300 miles.
Yeah,
No
see?
way.
Oh,
Yeah.
No, that's like across the state of Iowa. I can't do that.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Never say
so
never.
Maybe this year, like maybe I can get it. I can pull it together and
Yeah.
maybe ride another day. I know my mom wants to, so I think it'd be a lot of fun.
And it'd be a whole new experience to ride like at the quote normal time of the day. Like
Well,
to
and that was
actually
the problem.
see-
Like, people kept asking, like, how was it? I said, I loved it. However, we kept pulling into the towns as they were shutting down.
Oh yes,
yeah.
I know.
And
that
all I
well.
wanted to do was stop and just have a drink. And they're like, nope,
Yeah.
go. And so that was anyone that's thinking about RAGBRAI for the first time, get up at a reasonable time. And if the
Yeah.
Pork Tornadoes are playing in town the night before, go to bed immediately after their
Yeah.
last
Get a
note.
good night's sleep.
And get a
Yes.
good night's
Yeah.
sleep.
Yeah. And a reasonable time on RAGBRAI is different than like you're in my normal reasonable
Yes.
time. Like
Yeah.
10:30 is not an unreasonable time in a
Right.
normal world, but on RAGBRAI, 6 to 8 probably.
Yeah.
That's
is
about
when
when
you want to
like,
leave.
Yeah, getting out.
Yeah.
If you want to fully enjoy the day.
Yes.
If you really want to make yourself do that, I would suggest camping because then you'll hear the zippers of the tent.
Oh my
And
gosh.
there's no sleeping.
Yes.
and
So-
the Ziploc bags.
The
Oh
heat
my
of
gosh.
summer starts creeping up. The
as
sun's
soon as
coming
that
out.
sun-
Yep.
We're
yeah.
out.
You're out. Yep. So
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah, maybe I can get back on the bike this summer. I'd love
Well,
it.
we could maybe do a bet. No, I won't. I won't do it. I won't do it to
If
you.
this podcast episode gets X amount of downloads,
yeah.
I will think about riding another day.
Okay, tell the listeners why you invited us. Like, what was your vision?
Well, one of the things with the Confused Breakfast kind of taken off the way it is the interesting thing is I told you we were the #1 film review podcast in the entire United States a couple months ago. Iowa was like our 30th most listened to state.
What?
And we live here.
Oh.
Oh,
And it's fine, like I said, I wanted this broad thing, and so we, as the three of us on the show, we said we want to start reaching out to some friends and podcasts that we love, and say let's make some guest appearances, and let's try to cross universes a little bit. And I love your podcast, both your podcasts.
Yay.
I've been on it a few times
Yes,
now.
you have.
And I said, hey, if maybe you're hurting for a little bit of we're leading up to RAGBRAI, maybe we need a few fun episodes. And so I said, what if we did top 3 movies that involved some sort of bicycling scene?
Yeah.
and you sent a message to us, and the first thing I said was, "Are there movies about bicycles?" And now that we're sitting here, I mean, there are
Yes.
thousands of movies that have bicycles in them.
And some are about bicycles.
Yes,
Like some are
yeah.
100% plot
Yep.
related. Some just have scenes. So some of my honorable mentions, there's just a scene in that movie where there's a bicycle and you think about it. And it's
Yeah.
a powerful part of that
Yes.
Sure.
movie where like it just shows the importance of bicycles,
Yeah.
in cinema and pop culture. And
Yeah.
They're almost like a character in some of these movies
Yes.
where even if they're a side character or like a minor character, they play a big part. Like sitting there thinking about it, because at first I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to come up with 3 movies.
Right.
But then you're like, I have a list of 11, and I'm like, okay, I just have to think about it a little bit more.
think a little,
Yeah.
start Googling
Yeah.
top 10 bike movies.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
there were
but
some
the-
good articles out there.
The interesting thing is that a lot of those articles are only about the all bike movies, the movies that are only
Yes.
about bicycling, when there are gobs of movies that have bikes just as big, like a big part of the movie.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about those. But
Well, you think about basically anything from the 80s. I mean, if this was a kid's movie from the 80s, of course there's
Absolutely.
Think about Stranger Things and how perfect and beautiful that series is how much of that involves them riding on bicycles.
Yeah.
And it immediately transports you back to
Yeah.
nostalgia and that's what that show does so well. And I think that's what some of these movies do so well is when you
Yeah.
revisit them, you go, oh, riding bikes with friends.
Back in those days, mom didn't make us come inside. No parent was
Yeah.
watching these children.
No.
They're just
No.
out biking.
No
When
phones.
the street light turns on, come home.
That's right. Yep.
So do you think, now that I'm thinking about nostalgia, is that ultimately what RAGBRAI is? Because think about the times you spent with your best friends in the world riding bikes.
No. I was literally thinking about this yesterday. One of my movies is from the 70s.
Okay.
And the 70s is like, it was a resurgence of the popularity of cycling. And it's the, what was I calling it? The breadbasket of cycling, like where RAGBRAI came about, these cycling movies came about, people were getting bikes. They were just something about that. Maybe it was the hippies. Maybe it was like people getting away from having cars and the environmentalism movement. Like, I don't know
sure.
exactly how, or why, but cycling just blossomed in the 70s. And then you have the 80s movies where these people were maybe kids in the 70s
Yes.
or, they were like adults that then had kids in the 80s, where it's like sort of an echo of that popularity in the 70s. And so RAGBRAI came about. There's all of our movies are from a similar era,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would just really, man, I spent a lot of time on the couch thinking about it last night.
I hope the listeners' brains are turning a little bit because you're like,
Yeah.
anytime I see a top something list, I go, okay, I know what mine are. I
Yeah.
wonder if they're going to have the same ones I have.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I literally went from I can only think of a couple bike movies to right now I'm like, we could do this for 3 hours.
Yeah. And we all picked, we have, spoiler alert, we told each other what our movies were ahead of time.
Yes.
And only one of the movies was one that I had even considered doing. So that's how many there are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So usually what we do on the show is like we'll start with some honorable mentions because
Okay.
there are movies that deserve a quick mention, but like they didn't make the top list.
Okay.
Do you have any honorable mentions?
I have one honorable mention. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go first.
My honorable mention is a movie. It's actually a documentary called The Ride.
Okay.
The Ride.
That's very literal.
Yes. Yeah. There's no question.
What's it about?
Horses?
It's about
Could be.
so the guy who hosts The Amazing Race, Phil Kogan, him and a buddy decided to ride across the United States. But they had to do it in a time frame because he had to go film the grand finale of The Amazing Race. So he had to be at the, I don't remember if it was East Coast or West Coast, by a certain date because they were filming and it was like crappy weather. He got really sick, had to be hospitalized in Des Moines, Iowa.
What?
Yeah, it is
What rough year is this?
probably early or mid 2000s.
And this is a documentary?
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's crazy. And it would have been one of my top 3, except I couldn't find it on the internet anymore. It's
Yes.
like, this is no longer available. And I'm like, what? Anyway,
That's
mine.
tough.
Yeah. How about you guys?
I got a few. Again, I think about these scenes. Karate Kid. Remember the bicycle scenes? One of those scenes in Karate Kid, Daniel first goes to school that first day, and he rides his bike to school the first day, and Cruel Summer by Bananarama's playing in the background. It just got chills. Like, I don't know why there's these moments where song and nostalgia works perfectly together. Caddyshack. We just did Caddyshack with Bert. That intro scene is Danny Noonan riding his bike past all the rich houses and coming to the country
yeah.
club.
Yeah. Yep.
Short little bike scene.
And I saw a lot of stuff online about that, how Danny dismounts the bike with his legs over the handlebars. Have you ever seen anyone do that
What?
in real life?
No.
He gets off the bike by swinging his legs over the front of the bike.
Whoop,
Yeah.
and just kind of flings over.
And 10 out of 10, I'm going to try that later.
Oh, God.
Maybe not with clip-ins.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe in the privacy of my own home and
Right.
then later maybe show off if it works.
There you go.
Yeah.
If it works.
Yeah.
I had another one, Wayne's World. Think about that scene where Wayne's ex-girlfriend, like the kind of the crazy girl, they're playing hockey in the street, and she rides by. And she goes, "Hi, Wayne." Hi, and she hits the car and
she
flips
crashes.
it, and she's okay.
Yeah.
Like just a little scene. So that's why they didn't make my main, because they're little scenes. I got 2 more. It's The Sandlot. Think about that is one of our episode in The Sandlot was one of my favorites because it really takes you back to being a kid, but all that other team riding their bikes onto the diamond.
Yeah.
And they challenge them to the game. Like, that was your mode of transportation back then. They all had their bikes.
Yeah.
And I know we did a lot of old ones, so I wanted to add the newest one I could possibly add. This may be a deep cut. Have you ever seen I Heart Huckabees?
No,
I have
but
not seen that.
I have heard of it.
It is well worth the watch. It's a bit of a strange, so many famous people in this movie. Bit of an indie film kind of a deal, but the main character, two of the main characters ride their bikes around town because they're protesting gasoline and fossil fuels. And there's some very memorable bicycle scenes in that movie.
Oh,
And
very good.
It's funny, it's intellectual, and it's got bikes in it.
Oh, love it.
Honorable mention?
Okay, I have 3 honorable mentions. So my first one would be Quicksilver, which is an older movie, but it features Kevin Bacon and Nelson Vales.
Nelson Vales.
My friend and yours.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're
What is that called?
Quicksilver.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're bike messengers. And that's the whole premise of the movie, just focuses on them being bike messengers. And if you don't know Nelson Vales, he is an Olympic medalist, America, or maybe the world's first Black Olympic medalist in cycling, in track cycling.
Really?
And he was a bike messenger in New York City for a while.
Logan pulled it up on the screen for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Nelly rides RAGBRAI every year. You can see him often in the primal tent enjoying himself.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've become friends over the years and have to give that movie a shout out because
For sure.
gotta love
Wow,
Nelly,
there's
yeah.
Kevin Bacon.
And I
Yeah.
do not know Kevin Bacon,
I do.
but
I met Kevin Bacon when he was singing with his brother, the Bacon Brothers.
Was it good?
Yes.
Will you tell Kevin Bacon,
Oh,
'cause
yeah.
since you're good friends with him?
I can text him. What
Text
do
him
you
real
want?
quick. We had a viral TikTok recently where we put the Mentos commercial music over Tremors, the movie Tremors.
Okay.
And it had like 10 million views, but everyone kept tagging Kevin Bacon going, isn't this funny? Silence.
Kevin.
Kevin, that's
I'll talk
funny.
to him.
Just talk to him for me.
Yeah.
Kev, come on.
Come on, Kev.
Like just check and see if he's actually seen it.
Okay.
Just be like, I know he's seen it.
Yeah.
Kev, come on.
Come on.
Like, don't be lame. Okay, so my next one is a documentary called Icarus. And that one is, I don't know, last 5-10 years. And it is about this guy started out making a video about doping in the cycling world. And to make this video, he actually took the supplements himself.
Oh, wow.
And through obtaining these supplements,
seen that.
he broke into like an illegal dope smuggling ring for the Olympics. And like, it just blossoms out from there.
I think I
Wow.
just kind of was, you're just going through Netflix and nothing's catching your eye. I think I just said, whatever.
Yeah.
And that was like 2 hours long. I just went boom and I was enthralled by it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It really is enthralling. It is. You start thinking about it, it's this little seed and it just like blooms into this massive, I don't know, conspiracy theory, but it's not a theory. It's real life.
How soon does everyone that rides RAGBRAI have to do their doping tests? Is that like the week before?
At
or
the start line.
We were going to
when
make
you're
that a
dipping your
surprise.
year 50 dope test?
Ooh, busted. Oh, well, about that Guinness record, not going to happen anymore.
Ooh, yeah, half the people say,
Half
that's not for
everyone's
me.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, guess not. So then my third one is actually more of like a worst list where I thought I would review the classic American Flyers. It has Kevin Costner. It is supposed to be a classic cycling movie. I made it 20 minutes into that movie. I'm really sorry.
Didn't like it?
It was awful.
Oh.
Kevin Costner he's young and he has a mustache and he's not wearing that mustache. That mustache is wearing him. It's like
It's a Sam Elliott
it's
kind of
right
thing?
in the
Yeah.
middle. Yeah, it's the whole screen. And then his little brother has a cowboy hat on. Nobody acknowledges it at all.
We just don't talk about it.
Yeah, it would be a great Mystery Science Theater episode, I think.
Cool.
Yeah, but I probably come back and watch it just because it is about cycling and
Sure.
it just doesn't have that love of. I mean, no, they clearly love cycling, but it just doesn't have that like magic to it that some of these other movies have.
That's cool. So this is I sniff a lot when I talk Kevin Costner, right? Like
yeah.
Yellowstone Kevin
Yes.
Costner, where every other word's came take our land.
Yeah. And I thought I was going to love it because there are a lot of gratuitous St. Louis scenes. And I lived in St. Louis for a little
grew up
while.
in
So
St.
I was
Louis.
like, oh, yes, the arch and like this and that. And it just did not. They go to Madison shortly thereafter and it just did not carry.
Where did you live in St. Louis?
I lived in University City.
Okay.
So like right behind on the right behind Blueberry Hill, sort of.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was down in that area.
I grew up, was born and raised in St. Louis till I was 15. We lived in North County in Florissant.
Okay, yeah.
Florissant, Missouri.
Very
And
good.
we rode our bikes everywhere.
Yeah, me too. Yep. And I would go down to the park in the middle of town
Yep.
and like bike around there and like look at, I don't know, the
By
stuff.
the zoo.
Yeah, the zoo.
Yeah.
Look at the zoo and where the World's Fair used to be.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like, yeah, I really loved living in St. Louis, but then I got into grad school and I moved away. But like, yeah, so it was great. But yeah, so I thought the movie would be good because of that reason. And I just, to put it on my top 3 list is not happening.
These movies we're about to get into, these are like the best of the best,
That's
in my
right.
opinion.
The cream of the crop.
in each of our opinions.
Who wants to go first?
I think Murph, you should go first.
Okay,
We need your number 3.
Ready? Are you ready?
Cue the music.
Do, 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 do. Okay, so as I said in my honorable mention, The Ride, right?
Yep.
Okay, so my third movie is called La Ride. So figure out
Is that
what
Spanish for the ride? French for the ride?
it's French.
El Nino.
So, and it also features Phil Kogan,
Okay.
the guy from Amazing Race, right? So he had so much fun riding across the United States, he grabbed the same friend and decided to mimic the 1928 Tour de France route on the same bicycles that the riders in 1928 rode. Yeah, so they had to find these vintage bicycles. They had to pretty much go to a welder and have them make them so they wouldn't break.
Yeah.
They were wearing the same outfits. They had the same like pith helmets on. It was crazy. They had to average. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about this. So Phil is from New Zealand, and he was enamored by a cyclist named Harry Watson, who finished the 1928 Tour de France.
Hooray.
Harry. Shout out to Harry.
Harry.
And so he wanted to duplicate it, right? But back in 1928, the Tour de France was all about the survival. It was not about we're all going to finish this. It was, I think, however many cyclists started it, only 40 finished. Like it was more about you are going to ride until you die. And
The point is no one's going to finish this.
That was
Like,
kind
it's-
of the point,
We're
yeah.
trying to not let you finish this race.
They averaged 150 miles per day.
Back then? Or these
Back-
guys did?
Well, they duplicated it. So
Wow.
yeah, they did the same
Wow.
thing. But think of 1928 versus now. The
technology and...
but the roads are now highways
Oh my
or interstates, so they had to. It was crazy. So this is a documentary of them doing it. They over 3,000 miles. They did one day 221 miles over the mountains, 20,000 feet of climb that day.
Oh my God.
20,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah, on these crappy, single speed bikes.
What is the full feet of climb over the 7 days of RAGBRAI this year?
I think 13,000.
13. Yeah, it's between 10 and 15,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so they did 221 miles. It was crazy. Like it took them 20 hours. And then
Well,
they had
yeah.
to get up the next day or later the same
brutal.
day. The next day was 200 miles, 15,000 feet of climb. So not only is Phil host this amazing, crazy, Amazing Race TV show, he's also amazing and crazy.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So anyway, I would highly recommend you watch La Ride.
Why didn't you make everybody this year for RAGBRAI have to ride 50-year-old bicycles? And...
It's really funny because I do ride a 50-year-old bicycle.
okay. See, there you go.
Yeah. But
Steel is real, man.
steel is real.
Yeah. So that concludes my number 3.
All
Okay.
right, you want to go?
All right, I'll go. So it's really tight between my number 2 and number 3. So don't judge me for my ranking. But I think I'm going to go with the Muppet movie for my number 3 movie.
Ooh, okay.
Muppet movie.
Yeah, because
From what year?
It's-
Roughly?
it's late 70s, early 80s.
I do remember this.
Yeah, and it's the very first movie they made of the Muppets. They were doing the Muppet Show for 5 years, and then Jim Henson decided that he wanted to do movies instead and go long form.
Oh, wow.
So this is their first movie that they made. And in the Muppet Show, they had done several biking scenes. It's kind of a theme with the Muppets. But this one is, so the movie starts, and it's Kermit in the swamp, and Kermit leaves the swamps to try to go to Hollywood.
remember this
Yes, so he's going to Hollywood, and so he starts off on a bicycle, and he's riding the bicycle, and the scene of him riding the bicycle in this town is the first scene in any Muppet movie or show where they're in the real world. and he's like out there with like actual human people.
Yeah.
And so he's out riding this Schwinn, and it's not a real Schwinn. Yeah. Yep. There it's on the screen.
I totally remember this.
It's actually like a scale model. So, or in some of the scenes.
How did they even film that?
Yeah. Well, that is the big question. And it was like movie magic at that time because they didn't really always have
so
the
cool.
behind the scenes. And look, frog legs. He's riding past. This is the bad guy. This guy wants him to advertise frog legs. He doesn't want to eat Kermit. He wants Kermit to be the spokes frog.
Oh my gosh.
But he does. And he's like, alive or dead. And I'm like, so why couldn't you just rip him off? Why do you even need Kermit? But it's fine. That's part of the movie. It's the Muppet magic. And so Kermit's riding this Schwinn, and they did it by a combination of poles, like moving the bike back and forth, and then they have a little dolly. But that made the magic is that they have the quick cuts between the wide frame and the close-ups, where they have Jim Henson operating the Muppet. So he makes a really good crack about a Schwinn that I forgot to look up at this point. So
I don't know if I've seen this.
it's so
I definitely
cute.
I don't think I've ever thought about it since I was 5.
Yeah, it's
but
so
now
cute.
I'm going. I definitely have seen.
Yeah,
that movie.
absolutely. And I was texting Murph. I have their McDonald's cups. I have all their McDonald's cups of there's a bike one of Kermit on the bike. So
That must have started the craze then, because I do remember Sesame Street did the same thing. It was called Follow That Bird. Did anyone remember seeing that?
Absolutely.
Where the actual Sesame Street characters went out into the real world. And there was crazy famous actors were in that movie too.
Oh, absolutely. Bob Hope, Edgar Bergen, Mel Brooks.
Yep.
Wow.
I mean, it is.
Wow.
It's like people that I recognize as being famous, but I had to look them up for not those guys, but like some of the other guys. It's cameo after cameo after cameo. It's so awesome. And so the bike scene is the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then my boyfriend's like, you're going to watch the rest of that movie? And I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, it was,
We started it.
so funny and it's so entertaining. So then their next movie, the Muppet Caper, it was so popular and so everyone was like, how the heck did you do that? So they have all the Muppets on bikes riding in a park. And it's where Kermit and Miss Piggy reignite their relationship and they're biking together and then everyone joins them. And then they have all sorts of bike scenes in all their other movies. So
That's awesome.
So I got to love them up. I got to give them up. It's a shout out.
Oh, yeah.
Spoiler alert, they make it to Hollywood, but it's just so adorable. I mean, that's not really giving it all
I still want to
away,
watch
but yeah,
it.
it's just a classic.
Mine, I'm like you. My number 3 and number 2 are kind of interchangeable. So I'm just gonna go with it. My number 3, Napoleon Dynamite.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And there are
Sweet.
two.
That's very sweet.
There are two particulars. First of all, I was one of the first people that I know that ever saw this movie.
Okay.
I was living in Iowa City, and there's an independent movie theater there. I don't know what it's called now, but it was that's where I saw I Heart Huckabees. You see these random movies maybe before they're mainstream, and I went there with a buddy, and we came out. We're like, this movie's gonna be huge. It sounded so dumb. And we're like, it was funny, but it was just cool. And there are two scenes that make me think about Napoleon Dynamite when he goes, "You ever taken off any sweet jumps?" And that wide angle shot of him going to the ramp and just going, and then later in the movie, he takes his brother Kip. He's pulling his brother Kip on rollerblades. He's hanging onto a rope, and he's trying to look at the screen.
It's a sweet jump.
Wow. Yeah.
Gosh.
You know what? The funny thing about Napoleon Dynamite is they don't really say what year it was set.
Yeah.
But it has an older feel to it.
Yeah,
So I
sure.
do feel like it's either just small town that hasn't moved into modern culture yet,
Yeah.
or it was supposed to be kind of early 90s or something.
Yeah.
I love Napoleon Dynamite. We will be covering that on a Confused Breakfast episode very soon.
I love that movie.
I can't wait to listen to it. I remember watching it the first time and just crying. I've never cried in a movie like that for laughing so hard.
The food. It's it was a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah,
I mean, you
absolutely.
couldn't go anywhere for about a year without someone quoting that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not a good movie quoter. I don't remember, but
You
Napoleon
knew that.
Dynamite, as soon as somebody will say it, I'll be like,
I bet you could throw a football over the mountains.
Uncle Rico.
I have a full body poster of Napoleon in my
nice.
basement.
Really?
Mhm. Yeah.
The one from the cover of the movie
Yeah.
where he's kind of going,
Yeah, he's and he's wearing his little vest and so cute.
That was one of my favorite usages of Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper.
Absolutely unforgettable.
They're at the school dance. No, actually, yeah, it's Time After Time, and there's another song right before it. I can't think of the name of it, but something about that school dance I feel like it inspired Stranger Things.
Yeah.
The end of season 2
Yeah.
is maybe the hardest I've ever like happy cried in my life. Was when they were all at the ice ball, and you're just going
Was it Forever Young?
Forever Young.
Oh yeah.
I wanna be
But it's like a different version
Yeah.
of it or something. I love that movie.
It's so good.
Here's your friendly reminder to go out and watch all these movies.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, oh.
Yeah. Okay.
I have Napoleon on DVD. I'm going to be definitely watching
Yeah,
that.
I think I have 2 copies of it.
Yeah, is that good?
Okay, my number two
movie.
We're going to go way, way back. Okay? So to 1969.
Okay.
And this movie is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah.
This is my favorite movie of all times.
Really?
I mean, I've probably watched it. I don't even know how many times I watch it. I will tell you, this is going to probably, if people know math, they're going to realize how old I am, because this was the first movie I saw in a movie theater.
Aww.
At like 6 months old. Like, why my mother would take me
Let's go do this.
to a movie.
I'll tell you why. I have no clue because I have a 9-month-old and I'm like, I would never take her to a movie theater.
No, yeah. She took me to the theater. Apparently I was crying, so I maybe didn't watch the whole movie.
Well.
And I know, yeah, so that part's crazy. But anyway, back to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. This features Robert Redford and Paul Newman, and there is a very famous bicycle scene.
The one we're watching right now.
Yes. So he's on, I think it's called, maybe I wrote it down. I did not write it down, but he starts the scene by saying, "Meet the future," because back then the bicycle was the future.
Well, sure.
And it was just a single speed bike. He did all his own stunts. And
It
if
all
you
looks
watch
so
this
young.
scene, he's like balancing on it and doing crazy things. And then more importantly, the lady that he's trying to woo gets on the handlebars and they go for miles. Like, I don't know how she balances. I don't know how she doesn't get her dress or her feet caught in the spokes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is just so cool. And the song that they play is B.J. Thomas, "Raindrops Keep Falling on Your Head." So I cannot listen to that song without thinking about the movie. It is classic. And the movie itself is fun because it's like the Wild Wild West, and they rob trains. Like, I don't know what you call that.
Train robbery.
Wagon trains.
No, actual
actual
trains.
trains?
Like, they'll be on horseback and they'll, jump onto a train and then rob them and then, whatever. So he's famous in himself, Butch Cassidy and Sundance
Yeah.
Kids. But then when you get Robert Redford and Paul Newman playing them,
Yeah.
oh my God, it's so
Yeah.
awesome. So
My favorite Paul Newman movie is Slapshot. Anybody remember that? The
No.
hockey movie?
No.
Best hockey movie ever made? Okay. No problem.
All right, well, put it on the to watch list.
yes,
Has nothing to do with bicycles.
It's sports, though. Sports adjacent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Number
my
two.
number 2 would be E.T., the extraterrestrial. And I hate putting that
Iconic.
how do you put that as a number 2 in any list?
Yeah.
But in terms of the biking within the movie. I mean, and it's truly essential in the movie in that it's how the kids get around. It's how they travel.
Yeah.
They go to school on their bikes. They go to the park on their bikes. They smuggle an alien on their bikes. I mean, it's all on their bikes.
Normal day's work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so they're in California, and I'm not going to go over the plot of E.T. because I think you probably know,
Right.
But there's an alien. And so it's in California, and they're riding BMX bikes. So this is my one where it's not a road bike, it's a BMX bike. And it's a Kuwahara BMX. And I hope I pronounced that right because I looked it up ahead of time. But it's a snazzy red bike with a basket on the front. And everybody, I think when you think of E.T., you think of the scene that we're watching now where it's Elliot and E.T. and they're launching up in front of the moon.
yes,
And
yes.
like,
That's the shot.
it's
from
the
movie,
symbol
yeah.
from Steven Spielberg's entertainment company or production company. But there's also a second scene in which they levitate on their bikes in front of the setting sun, which comes later in the movie. So there's actually 2 bike flying scenes, which I thought was fun to remember that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the bikes are an essential part of the movie. Like, it's how they got around back then. And I mean, not to bring Stranger Things up again,
You have
but
to.
watching the beginning of this movie, it's like you could watch them side by side.
Yep.
That just mirrors of each other.
There's the shot.
They're even playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, you're right. They are.
I haven't seen E.T. in call it 30 years.
Yeah.
And the first thing that pops in my head if you say E.T. is the bike.
Right.
Yeah,
Like
of
that
course.
is the
Yep.
first thing that pops in my
Yep,
head.
that's what I thought. The bike in front of the
Yeah.
moon. Yeah, so
they're all
and this
riding
is
their
the
bikes
second
and-
scene where they're gonna go in front of the setting sun. There's a little bit of weirdness about like it's full daylight and then all of a sudden the sun is setting. But like,
It was the
look,
80s.
movie magic, just forget about it. But yeah, I hadn't seen the movie. I've seen the movie, I don't know, a dozen times,
Yeah.
but I had to rewatch it for this because it has been years.
Yeah.
Did it hold up? How'd you feel about it
Absolutely.
modern day?
Oh, I loved it. So on my way here, I was listening to it in the car and I was crying. Like,
Really?
it's so good. Like, it is so good. And one thing I noticed about all three of my movies is that music is such an essential part.
Oh, for
just
sure.
alongside the bicycle. And of course, E.T. has John Williams. So it's like the best of the best with this. But the scene would just look maybe goofy without the music to go alongside of it. So I just thought that was kind of a cool thing to note. And the music is very different. Like, of course, The Muppets is like almost a musical.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then this
Yeah.
one has the John Williams. And then my third one, I'll talk about it in a little bit. But so the music is such a huge part of it. And I just love them going off-road and like they can beat the cars.
Oh, for sure.
Like, they just show those adults. And like in these 80s movies, adults are mean.
Yes.
Like they are never like cool or
They're never cool.
they're never like, oh, sweet, an alien. Like I would be like, wow, that's awesome. No, they're like, get it.
Kill the alien.
Yeah. Yep. And this one also had that cool like 80s latchkey kid thing where like the mom dumps some places and she's a good mom.
Yes.
Right.
But she leaves them alone.
Right.
Pretty
Right.
much.
Or like Elliot was out overnight and she's like, oh, well, I'm glad you're back. I'm going to run you a bath. Like that's nice. So it was funny to see that like the cultural things like
Right.
come back into play. But
Well, I'll play on that for my number 2, a movie called Rad. Tell me you guys have seen it.
No.
This was the quintessential movie of my childhood. It
Okay.
was essentially a BMX movie. So
I was
it's
going to
kind of
say,
going
it's
off
got to be
Yeah,
BMX.
yeah.
BMX. There's this small town kid who's really good at riding a BMX, and this pro circuit comes to town to show off all these pro riders, and they're trying to sell bikes and stuff. And they finally say, well, let's have a tournament to let a local kid ride. So this kid like beats everybody and then rides in the tournament, and it is the cheesiest, worst movie of all time, but yet it is the best movie. I mean, the music, this just quintessential 80s scenes with this montage and this guitar and music. You have to watch it strictly for just like if you ever rode a BMX bike in the 80s, like this. Yeah, like look at this. Lori Loughlin, before she went to jail, was in this movie. I don't think there's really anybody. Bill Allen was the main character. He's from Davenport, I believe.
Oh, awesome.
It'd be really cool for RAGBRAI maybe someday to reach out to him.
Oh, yeah.
He does a lot of public engagements because it's a cult classic. You either
Oh, heck yes.
have never heard of it or it's one of your favorite movies from childhood.
Yeah.
And
I am sorry. I have to say I've never seen it.
I own it on DVD. It's an illegally burnt copy that I bought on eBay from 2004, maybe.
Oh, my
but
God.
it's a really, really awesome. Talia Shore is his mom, so this is like post Rocky kind of. and
That's awesome.
She must have owed somebody a favor. Like, yeah, I'll be your mom in the movie. But yeah, I know there's people listening right now that are like, yes, rad. And other people are saying no.
It's super interesting because they're riding their BMX bikes like mountain bikes, whereas now they're more separate. They're different, way different styles.
Right.
And in this, they're riding them like as what I would imagine a mountain bike race would look
Yes.
like. So it just kind of back in that day, they hadn't separated as much or become so different.
Yeah.
So
And BMX, for a while there, BMX was huge.
Yeah.
Like where there were pro circuits and they had off-road courses. And I knew a guy that like raced in it. He was like semi-professional BMX. I want to do that. Yeah.
So I need to give a shout out to my friend Steve Emig because he still races BMX.
What?
all right.
As, a grown-up adult, he might even have grandchildren now. I don't know, but he literally races BMX.
That's awesome.
And he'll post
He
when
knows this movie.
He totally knows.
Yes.
He has to know this
Absolutely.
movie. Yeah. So anyway, okay.
All right, number ones.
Number one, I'm sure everyone at home right now is going, oh, I already know what everybody's number one is. Mine is Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Woo!
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I think
Pee-wee.
that might have been number one on all of our lists. And we said
Yeah.
only one person can talk about that.
Murph called dibs.
And I called dibs immediately. So
Yeah.
Pee-wee, obviously everyone knows this movie, so I don't have to give you the highlights, but he rides a 1947 Schwinn Western Flyer.
Such a classic.
Amazing.
and it is pimped out.
It's cherry red.
Oh, yeah.
Cherry red. Yes.
All the bells and whistles.
Yes. So
Dream bike.
He it's his dream bike. It gets stolen. He thinks by his nemesis Francis, and then he goes to a fake fortune teller who says it's in the basement of the Alamo.
The Alamo.
You must go to the Alamo. And if you don't know, there is no basement at the Alamo. But he, the whole movie is him traveling to go find this bicycle.
Meeting Large Marge. Meeting
Yeah.
the prisoner.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing.
There it is. Look at it.
Oh my gosh.
It's gorge.
Yeah.
If you had a Mount Rushmore of bicycles from movies, this is one of them.
Yeah.
This particular bicycle is maybe the number one.
You could tell it was PB's bike. Like, you just could.
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, look at the handlebar or the flyers on the handlebar.
Oh, everything about
The
it is
streamers.
amazing. Yeah. And so the film was directed by Tim Burton.
Of course.
So it's
A+.
It's like a weird, the fact, Pee Wee Herman is like a childlike adult. Like it's just everything
makes
about
no
it is
sense.
weird. But if this movie would be on, I would sit and watch it. There's no way I would decline watching it because it's just awesome.
It's like if this was the day when we still had TV where you just flip the channels, if this was on one of the channels,
Yes.
you would stop and watch it.
for sure.
There are certain movies that if you walk into the room when it's playing, you go, well, I guess we're going to watch this.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing for the
Yeah.
next 2 hours.
I'm just going to watch the rest of this, I guess.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, yeah. And, everyone knows who Paul Rubens is. He's, did Pee-wee's Playhouse, which is a TV show first. And there are a couple of Pee-wee movies.
There was this. That one is Big Adventure.
Yep. And
Big
then,
Top Pee-wee.
I think
the
so.
circus one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
I think I'm confusing him with the Ernest movie, so I'm not going to say any. Goes to camp.
Yeah.
goes to jail.
Yeah.
Saves
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah, exactly.
Scared stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's it.
Nice.
Movies.
That's a fantastic.
Pee-wee's
number
Big
one.
Adventure.
May I ask you, what is the word of the day? Bicycle.
Bicycle. That's right.
Okay, so my number one is probably the number one that a lot of people have guessed, which is Breaking Away. It's one of the most classic bicycle movies. It's not only about bicycles, there's bicycles in every scene. It's a major plot point, but it truly loves the bicycle. There's all sorts of gratuitous shots of them like tuning the spokes and like pumping the tires and like shining the paint. I mean, it's just... the movie's as in love with the bicycle as I am. I mean,
It's bicycle porn, basically.
Yes,
It's like,
exactly.
oh, look at that bike.
oh man, yeah. So it's such a wonderful movie, and in this movie, it's all about this kid who's in love with Italy and the cycling culture of Italy, and his bike is a Massi. I hope I pronounced that right, but he has 2 different ones, and the quintessential scene from this movie is the one where he's training and he's riding behind a semi, and he's drafting the semi, and the semi driver's like holding out 3 fingers out the window, like he's going 30 miles an hour. And then he's like, yeah, I can go faster. And he goes 40 miles an hour. And they go up to 60 miles an hour, which is like insane. Right. And he's not wearing a helmet. And I'm just like, hey, is he going to be okay? I mean, it's really crazy. And then, so it's just all about the bike. And it's got this really cool, like Italian opera back music in the background. And like, that's a plot point too. And I thought this one is another one where the fashions are really interesting and cool. It's in 1979, but me being from Iowa and living in Iowa most of my life, they're what I think of as 80s fashions because fashion came to us later.
Oh, sure.
And so it was really cool to sit there and think about it and watch it where like in this cool, cool movie Hollywood type stuff, it was way ahead of what I would have expected.
Right.
And the whole movie is filmed in Bloomington, Indiana, where I lived in Indiana for a while. So that I was like, it made me nostalgic for like Indiana, although I lived in Indianapolis, but like even there, the bike culture is pretty big in Indiana, where not like Iowa, but they had a velodrome in Indianapolis where I lived, and like they have this bike racing culture, and it was just really cool to throw back to that. And it was really cool that they filmed it on location. So it's set in Indiana, filmed in Indiana. Blah, blah, blah. Indiana.
You said Breaking Away?
Breaking Away. And I keep calling it the Cutters, but that was our team.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
I've never seen that, but what I'm seeing on this clip is like, that seems like a rag. Of any movie we've talked about, like that's the RAGBRAI movie.
Absolutely. And this is what I was talking about when I said like all these things started happening in the 70s around cycling. It just was like, it was the feeling of the time, like everybody was into cycling. And there's also the subtext of like these kids. So this watch through, I realized that it's about breaking away as in like you're in a pack of cyclists and you then break away to lead the cyclists, but it's also about them being blue collar kids of blue collar workers and breaking out of that and like how do we grow and how do we like expand our horizons and do I go to college and like stuff like that. So it was really interesting to see that like deeper meaning of the movie in it. But there's all sorts of nostalgic like swimming in the summer break and like being a kid in the summer and just biking around and like this is their last time to have no responsibilities and like just really it takes you back, man.
Breaking Away.
Yeah.
All right.
You keep setting me up for my next thing because my number one is The Goonies.
The Goonies.
And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, that's not really like, that's just like a couple scenes of bikes. But The Goonies is probably my favorite movie of all time. In fact, I just recently got to go to Oregon, to Astoria, Oregon, with the Confused Breakfast. We were the only people that have been inside of Mikey's house publicly in the last 10 years.
Wow.
We got to spend the whole day in there
Wow.
and film. We have a full, I'll send you the video.
Wow.
It was the coolest thing I've ever done. And that movie means a lot to me. And a couple years ago, I heard someone say that at one point, you and your friends all went outside to play for the last time together, and you didn't know it.
Oh.
And like that is such a sad sentiment. And the Goonies really taps into that for me.
Yeah.
Because it's this last ditch story, and we did a full episode about the Goonies, and I think we hit on it pretty well. Where it's like, what happened after this? Everybody probably slowly drifted away, and life changed, and that guy moved, and maybe they didn't actually save the Goondocks for more than a couple of years. And then everything got demolished, and that one day in their life where they decide to get on their bikes, ride further than they ever have, all the way to the Fratelli's house. And then, like, you know, even Brand's bike, where it was the most important thing to him in the world. He was a 16-year-old kid, and he did 470 lawnmower jobs just to pay for this bike.
Yeah.
It was the most important thing he's ever had. And if you've never had a chance to go to Astoria, Oregon area, like Cannon Beach, Oregon, just go. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. That's where that movie was filmed. I'll send you the link to our Goonies house adventure.
That is so cool.
It will be one of the things I think about on my deathbed. To be like, wow, can't believe I did that. I know to some people they're like, this is the Goonies house. Like, no, for me, that's my favorite movie. It's one of the best movies ever made. Yeah, like look at them riding their bikes. I mean, it's the best. I love it.
It's so classic. Aren't they really tight about who's allowed into that house?
Yeah, someone's lived there for 22 years. And so, no one has been allowed to go in that house unless you were friends with her.
Yeah. So that's really special.
Yeah, he gets his bike and it's amazing.
It's that nostalgic feeling that a lot of our movies have.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
Wow.
But that's why a lot of people get back into biking in adulthood as well for RAGBRAI.
That's what I've noticed is
Yeah.
that it's sort of RAGBRAI, just not even RAGBRAI, just getting on a bike and riding a trail in your town.
Yeah.
Feels sort of like you're a kid again.
Yeah,
for
You're
sure.
like, look at those people. I saw them earlier. Oh.
Yeah.
Like it's such a cool thing, that bicycling, and it's cool to see it just completely blowing through the roof of popularity, and RAGBRAI is bigger than it's ever been. It's just it's evident why. It's the bicycle and what that does for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and just that feeling every year when you go, or for me, because I get to bike it, to show up. And even though there might be, 15,000 people, you get to see the people that you only see once a year.
Yeah.
Like,
and you can't, you shouldn't be looking at your cell phone. Like you're away from your responsibilities. You tap into that childlike feeling where
They didn't have them back then.
Yeah, I call it summer camp for adults because like you let go.
Yeah.
That's how I ride it. Some people are a little bit different in that they have their computer and like their phone mounted on their handlebars, but like that's not how I would want to do it because that's part of the appeal is you step away from the world. Sometimes your phone doesn't even work, and like sometimes you're in rural America, which is they have cell phones now, but sometimes they don't work when we come through, and like I don't know, it's just that feeling that the freedom, the adventure, the like independence that you had as a kid.
Yeah.
do you think people who are listening to this right now are like shouting out other bicycle
I'm
movies
sure.
that we didn't
Hit us up in
mention?
the comments. Let us know, because I'm sure we missed some.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm sure we did.
Yeah.
But I think we hit some pretty good ones.
I think that was fun.
I think so too. That's our top 9 for sure.
Top nine
Top 9?
movies about bicycles.
About bicycles. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Good. Well, thanks for having us on.
Thanks.
Yeah.
This was awesome.
Oh,
Yeah, thanks for joining
and thanks,
us.
Logan, for doing all the great production.
Thanks for visiting us here at Upload Media Group. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. My pleasure for sure.
I can tell you that everyone out there thinks they can start a podcast and wants to start a podcast, but the amount of work that goes into actually doing it right is well beyond most people's abilities.
Yeah.
And you have one shot when you announce that you did a podcast and here's our first episode. If it doesn't sound good, no one's going to tune back in. So if you need help, this is the place to go.
Yes.
I can tell you
exactly.
And I will say thank you to everyone who is listening to this. We can't do it without the listeners.
That's right. So,
All right.
it takes a village.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Well, listeners, that is it for this week. We both want to thank you for tuning in to listen to the Just Go Bike podcast.
And if you'd like to contact us with a comment about the podcast, or maybe you have a topic in mind, you can reach us at justgobikepodcast@gmail.com, or you can also follow us on social media at justgobike on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, especially if you're a fan. And if you have any extra time, pop on over to the Murphology podcast for more bike adventure interviews.
All right, that's a wrap. We'll be back next week. Until then, just go bike!